It's Tommy on tap, baby.
59. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Gonna bite a kneecap off.
On the last play of the game.
It's Tommy on tap.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tommy on Tap. I am Bobby. I'm with my brother Kevin and our dad Tom. And we just want to say that if you like sports, then you'll like this channel. We break down the stats and schemes behind all the best stories that are going on in sports. So if you enjoy the show, give a like, leave a comment, subscribe. Tell us what you'd like to hear in the future or add something on it that we missed. So without further ado, Tommy, what do we have on tap today?
Hey, great show, Michigan State Spartan fans. Go green.
Go white.
Go State. The 2013 Michigan State Spartans, was really a turning point for D'Antonio. That around that time, all of us Spartan fans love it. It was a great time to be a Spartan fan, and so we're going to talk about that. We're going to hit on a couple other little things. We're going to have a little take a shot round here at the end of the night where we just talk about some things that are on our mind in sports. So, hey, first thing, though, I need to get this thing started off buying you guys around tonight. What are you going to have, Bobby?
I'm drinking a Founders All-Day Hazy IPA, a little spin on the All-Day IPA. Last year they had the All-Day Vacay, I think. That was pretty good, but I'm a real big fan of this All-Day Hazy.
Nice. What about you, Kev? What do you want?
I've got a Day Crush Session Sour Ale by Evolution Craft Brewing Company from Salisbury, Maryland.
Excellent. And I'll have a Bell's Black Hearted. It's a Black India Pale Ale, and it is delicious. I'm going all Bell's today from Comstock, Michigan. A little different. Came in a kind of a variety pack that Bobby and I saw this weekend. So Black-hearted for me. So let's get started. Hey, listen, I know a lot to talk about here with this. But, when you think about the 2013 Michigan State Spartans, an outstanding season, a fun season from start to finish with a lot of ups and downs. Even though we won a lot of football games, there were still some interesting stories that were a lot of fun to follow. But it kind of starts back in, like a lot of great seasons do, in their season of 2012. And I won't touch on a whole lot before I turn it over to you guys. But, just if you remember that was really when we started to establish that defense, a dominant defense. We lost 6 games that year. We'll talk about all that, 7-6. We lost 6 games by 30 points. And we had one game against Notre Dame early in the year that we lost by 17, but then it just was a string of just one play, 2 plays away from winning. We lost it. Notre Dame was ranked number 20 when we lost to them by 17. We lost to an Ohio State team that was ranked 14th at the time by 1. We lost to Iowa by 3, Michigan by 2. They were ranked at the time, I think, in the top 20. We lost to a number 21 Nebraska team by 4, and then we lost Northwestern by 3. So, it was the beginning of the tough, hard-nosed football. I think you hear a lot of people say that before you really turn the corner, you'll have one of those years where you're close. You guys know what I mean? Where you're just close. You're right there. You're just not making the plays. You don't have that leadership that takes you over the top sometimes, but it certainly started to come into play then.
Yep, and that Notre Dame team that you're talking about that we lost by 17-2 they went to the national championship game. That was when Manti Te'o was there, and they lost to Bama in the championship game. And then the rest of those conference games, the 5 games that Sparty lost by a combined 13 points. Right? They limp at the end of the season, kind of limp into the bowl game. They get the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl against TCU, and at half they're down 13-0. And Andrew Maxwell has been the quarterback throughout the season. Connor Cook comes in, kind of gives a spark to the offense. Might not have had the best numbers himself, but something about when he came in seemed to give a spark to the team. They went on to pull off the win, I think, what did we say, 17-16? Is that what it was, Bob?
Yep, 17-16.
Yeah. And that really kind of set the stage for when we enter into the 2013 season. Like, Tom, like you said, right on the cusp of being able to make a big run and have a lot of success. And then when we get into 2013, that's kind of what we see as they start the season off. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. Bob, do you want to start off just kind of talking about the season of 2013 a little bit?
Yeah. If you don't know, that was the best season in Michigan State football history. I think we split a national championship back when Tommy was in diapers. Am I right on that?
66, right?
Yeah, I probably was still in diapers then.
But that year, 2013 for Michigan State, we are a drive away from being able to go play for a national championship against Florida State. We end the season 13-1, and it all kind of started, like you guys said, at that TCU bowl victory where we put in Connor Cook. But what you were getting at, Kevin, it wasn't just a storybook, hand the reins over to Connor Cook and it's blue skies. After that bowl victory, D'Antonio sticks with Andrew Maxwell to lead Michigan State the next year. So they go into their first game against Western Michigan, and I think it was the worst passing game of D'Antonio's era. Maxwell threw for like 30 yards. It was real bad. And Western went 1-11 that year. I think it was PJ Fleck's first year. So Connor Cook starts the second game, and exactly like you said, Kevin, just something about the team worked better.
And that's one of the few kind of criticisms I have of D'Antonio is I think he's done that twice, right? So, but up through the 2011 season, he had Kirk Cousins there, had good success in that first run, had that down year where he started Andrew Maxwell while Connor Cook was on the team, and for whatever reason, Andrew Maxwell beat him out in practice regularly enough that he started that season. The next year, first game in, right, by the end of the first game, you finally realize he's got to make that switch. And we'll talk about this a little bit, but he has a good run with Connor Cook for 3 years, probably the 3 best back-to-back-to-back years in Michigan State history, at least in recent, in the past 40 years. And the following year, they go 3-9 as he's trying to start the senior Tyler O'Connor and figuring out, he's got Brian Lewerke on there. And then eventually after that year, Brian Lewerke comes back, becomes the starter, and you start to see success again. One of the few criticisms of D'Antonio, he seems to have a pattern of not being able to identify the correct quarterback that he needs to kind of spark his team and lead them.
And that is one of the most significant things that shot us in the foot of not being in the national championship. So,
hey, wait, before you get into that though, but I understand it might be a criticism, but what it is a loyalty. It's I think it's him being loyal to the effort. Andrew Maxwell.
Oh, sure.
So in fairness, okay, go ahead.
But get this. So Michigan State had that 7-6 season, and they're not a ranked team, and they're playing Notre Dame, and it's an ugly game. Connor Cook is starting, and he doesn't have terrible numbers. This is like week 3 or 4. He's 16 of 32 for 150 yards and a touchdown. And Michigan State gets the ball with 2 minutes and 11 seconds left, and they have to go have a drive and score a touchdown to win the game. And D'Antonio pulls Connor Cook and puts in Andrew Maxwell for the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
And Maxwell went 0 for 4, and we lost the game. And in the post-game press conferences, there were 2 different stories written on the faces of D'Antonio and Connor Cook. Connor Cook was heartbroken that D'Antonio didn't believe in him to finish out the game. A little later in Connor Cook's career, we see him lead one of the best drives that I've ever seen in 2015 against Iowa to go win the Big Ten championship. I mean, Connor Cook could have done that day, but D'Antonio wouldn't let him do it. It's just kind of a weird thing that I agree. That's the D'Antonio criticism, is kind of figuring out what quarterback needs to be taking snaps.
Yeah, you know what else in that game? What I can remember watching that game, I was surprised that Maxwell came back in. I think my thought at the time was, and I don't know if it was
he didn't even come back in though. Like he was out the entire game.
Yeah, but he put him in. I think because Andrew Maxwell was a better athlete. I think he thought that he was going to have to be able to scramble and do some things there. It didn't end up working out, obviously, but that's what I can remember at the time. In my mind was that's why they were putting him in.
Another thing about that game is pass interference calls, and I'm not going to say necessarily that they were all bad, but there were 5 of them that decided that game. 2 of them by Darqueze Dennard, and 3 of them by Trey Waynes. Both of them had NFL careers for more than the league average. And Kevin, I know that you'll get into kind of how Michigan State's defense works, but the idea, more or less, is that they're going to stuff you in the box. You're not going to be able to run, and then their athletes are just going to be better in the secondary. And Michigan State's good athletes were playing physical, and man, there were some real tough calls, specifically on Trey Waynes. I mean, both of the ones that Darquez Dennard got called for, those were probably pass interferences. When I was watching this game, the Trey Waynes pass interference,
and that's the one
terrible.
that drives me nuts at the end of the game too.
Last
A very
one,
important drive, and the Notre Dame player is lying on. Trey Waynes is turned towards the ball, about to intercept it. The Notre Dame player goes over his back.
And it's a Trey Waynes penalty.
And knocks the ball, and Trey Waynes gets the penalty. Yeah, I don't want to complain too much because I think we'll sound like Packers fans or something. But
I agree. But that game,
it's frustrating.
That game's just tough because if we don't lose it, then we're probably in the national championship game playing Jameis Winston.
Very likely. Yep.
But you know what? Now, as we roll down through this, it's quite interesting because you go to South Bend. You lose a controversial game. You just come off a season where you lose a bunch of close games anyway, and now you have to travel to Iowa.
Yeah.
And can you find they're not a tougher place to play, really? I mean, in the Big Ten, maybe the Horseshoe, of course, with Ohio State, but Iowa's unbelievable, and we come in and we win that football game. I mean, that was huge, and the defense dominated. It put us at 4-1. And then we just went on a stretch of playing some great football in the Big Ten. Indiana, Purdue, Illinois followed right on down. And then it came to the Michigan game. And I think one thing we didn't talk about the year before wasn't when they beat us in the 7-6 year, wasn't Mike Hart the tailback? And wasn't that when he made the comment about Big Brother?
That was earlier, I believe.
Yeah, that was
because
earlier.
The 7-6 year was after Kirk Cousins had gone to the NFL.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but
this was Denard Robinson type. I think actually Devin Gardner was the quarterback at this time. So this is after Denard Robinson, but before Brady Hoke's out of there.
Okay, and here's the other thing. When we end up in that game, so we're down. We are 7-1. We've won 4 in a row, and we're at home against Michigan. Do you realize that was the first time all year we were ranked?
Yeah, and at 22,
we were ranked 24th. According to my stat, 24th. Yep. So the whole year, we're battling to get up in there. We finally get ranked 24th. That was what really shocked me, that we weren't even ranked until the 9th week of the season that year.
Yep, and from there had continued to win some Big Ten games, which can always be tough. I know Nebraska, for whatever reason, Bo Pelini's Nebraska teams always had cause a little trouble for Michigan State teams around that time. I don't know what it was. I can remember a couple of years. I think the next year maybe.
Yeah.
We had an undefeated season going, and we lost to Nebraska. It took winning, kind of late in the season. It took winning a couple games there at the end and beating Ohio State and beating Iowa to be able to get to where we got that season too. Nebraska always gave trouble, kind of on fluky plays and whatnot, but able to pull off the win there. And then Northwestern and Minnesota, the defense handled them, and the offense, scored enough points to win that.
Yep. And then we come up to the big game, right? I mean, the Buckeyes were the team we had to beat.
Yep, that was the Big Ten championship game. I think that's the one that when Michigan State at the end of this, we can talk about how the game went a little bit, but at the end, I think that's the Urban Meyer sad pizza meme came from that, where he's sitting on his golf cart at the end of the game, looking all sad, eating a pizza in the locker room, and they. Michigan State's defense in particular really handled Ohio State in that game.
And did they do anything crazy in that, Kevin, or was it just their base defense that they used to beat them?
Yeah, I mean, it was their base scheme, their base over cover 4 defense and the zone blitzes that they run with it. I think the key is Ohio State's under Urban Meyer and largely under Ryan Day too, although I think Ryan Day has a slightly different philosophy on this. Urban Meyer's philosophy from his Bowling Green days was you count the number of safeties, and if there's 2 up there, you run the ball. And you run the ball and force them to go to 1 high safety, and then you have passing concepts that attack 1 high safety. That's Urban Meyer's philosophy. And Michigan State, down in and down out, lines up with 2 pressed corners on the outside, 7 defenders close to the box. Maybe the linebackers are spread out a little bit if the offense is spread out, and 2 safeties back. Now, they're not back deep. They're about 10 to 12 yards, depending on the down. So in his mind, you run the ball. Well, those linebackers are immediately triggering into the box to stop the run if they see run action. Depending on the spread of the offense, the safety's role might change. But as more people get in the box, they're triggering down to get down in there and run, stop the run as well. And so they ran the ball a lot into those looks, and they had some success. I can't remember the exact number of yards that they had, but Michigan State held them to about 100 yards, maybe 75, 80 yards less than their season average.
And they've got two running backs in Carlos Hyde and Ezekiel Elliott that are in the backfield. So it's not like they're just stopping any old running backs. They're stopping some studs that have great NFL careers.
And Braxton Miller at quarterback, who rushed for 142 yards in the game.
Yep. And and so then, they're not running the ball on Michigan State. That's basically Michigan at that time, right? So Pat Narduzzi's defense, you're not running the ball on them. You're going to have to throw the ball. And like you said, Bobby, that year, they had some great secondary players, particularly their corners on the outside. If you decide to treat the way Michigan State is playing defense as if they have 9 in the box and you're one-on-one on the outside, then you take shots on the outside, and those corners could play ball. And they held them to about 100 yards below their season average in passing. I think there was about 101 yards or something like that. I think I saw that Ohio State got through the air. They scored, half of their season average. And what I guess that surprised me a little bit. Ohio State had kind of mowed through the Big Ten up until that point. But I was also surprised at how successful the offense was, because that's one thing. It wasn't until the next year where all of a sudden Sparty started putting up some big numbers on offense. The fact that they were able to hold them but also score enough to still win that game was really impressive.
They scored 34, and it's funny, whenever you get in a big game like that, what you can't allow a team to do is everything. And so you force Ohio State to run the football, you bend but don't break, you don't allow them to score touchdowns, and that's how you have a chance to win the game,
Yeah. And talking about Michigan State putting up points, one thing I found impressive looking through this is Le'Veon Bell goes pro after the 7-6 season, and Jeremy Langford steps up. He had been on the roster for the last 2 years and only had 9 carries. And then suddenly he's put in as the workhorse, and he had like 100 yards less than Le'Veon Bell on the season. He ran for like 18 touchdowns. The dude just stepped up and had an awesome season and filled some pretty big shoes in Le'Veon Bell.
Absolutely. Hey, so we've covered basically the regular season and the Big Ten championship game. How about before we jump into the Rose Bowl, we go for another round?
Absolutely. What do you want, Bobby?
I have an all-day IPA that's not hazy, just a regular one.
There you go. What about you, Kev? What do you want?
Sticking with the Day Crush.
Right, and I'm gonna stay, like I said, this is cold-hearted. Okay, so just to give you an example, on the bottle, if you guys haven't seen this, dark-hearted, there's a fish, but in the dark-hearted, the fish's bones.
It's black-hearted. We're trying to get that Bell's sponsorship, so we got to make sure it's black-hearted.
Oh, black-hearted, I'm sorry. And it was delicious, by the way. And now I'm going cold-hearted, and it's a fish in ice. So I'm popping this and going to have this. And I know everybody's pretty impressed. We do about 3 beers in about 30 minutes all the time. So we have mastered the art of drinking while we talk sports.
Wait till we incorporate the shots at the end of the show.
Right, it's an acquired taste. So, all right, Kevin, why don't you lead us in a little bit more on this big Ohio State win, or where are we headed now to talk about?
Well, I mean, after the Ohio State win, right, we win the Big Ten. Hopefully this tradition continues. We'll see what happens, but...
Were we still leaders and legends at that point?
Yes, we were. It didn't go to East and West until the year after, I believe.
Okay. So we're leaders and legends.
So we have Michigan. So just so people who don't know what the leaders and legends situation was, they didn't split up Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State to be in the same division. Ohio State was separate. So usually Michigan State and Ohio State would never play in the championship game. That would be settled now when it split East and West and they're in the same division. That's not ever going to happen again.
Yeah, and this was the last year of Leaders Legends.
Okay, so we are, so and again, looking at we went from 24th till we play Ohio State. Ohio State was number 2 at the time, and we were 10th at the time, so we get, going into bowl season, we jump all the way up to number 4.
Yep.
And so we're going to play in the Rose Bowl, which is an amazing thing. And you guys know my feeling on that all the other things aside, making playoffs and all that crap, winning a Big Ten championship and going to the Rose Bowl is the pinnacle to me.
Well, and I think that Sparty felt like that was the pinnacle to them as well. I think that you saw no one was declaring for the draft early. They were all committed to going out there and winning this thing.
Absolutely. Yep. And boy, talk about the team we were playing. Kind of a mirror image of ourselves, right? Stanford.
Yeah.
That whole team recruited by
Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah,
that was David Shaw's third season, I think.
Yeah, what a great job he did, man. He's a great coach too. Listen, it was a battle. I mean, it started right from the get-go, and it was a typical Michigan State game, right? I mean, it was Stanford starts off, and they go up 10-0 on us.
Yeah, they jumped out to an early lead. Yep.
Yeah, which was not unusual, in a big game for us. I mean, we're kind of feeling our way. You can kind of see it. But you also see us kind of start to regain momentum. So, we come down. Langford scores a touchdown, right in the second quarter to make it 10-7. But they march down. They have a 40-yard interception return. You remember the mistake that Cook made? I mean, if you haven't pulled it up on video, I mean, it's just a blatant, bad throw, bad read. Kid runs it back, 40 yards for a touchdown. So we are going in almost at half down 17-7, but nope. That was with 2:07, and Cook rallies. And again, this is kind of where he was. You could, a lot of criticisms maybe of him as a leader and everything else by some people. But, he just throws that big interception with 2:07 to go, and he drives us right back down the field, and we score a touchdown with 28 seconds left to make this thing 17-14. I mean, that
bolsters my Notre Dame thesis.
Yep.
Just huge. So start the second half now. So we really weren't playing our best football, and Stanford was in control. That drive puts us in. We get the ball to start the second half. We drive down and kick a field goal. We tie this game up, and that took us a minute, 2 minutes, 4 seconds. So the last 4 or 5 minutes of actual football, we kind of took this game over. Got another stop on defense. So we start the fourth quarter, tied 17-all. Again, typical Michigan State. Big throws to some of those receivers. Remember Tony Lippett?
Oh, yeah.
Guys like that. Mumphrey. I mean, Lippett ends
Aaron
up
Burbridge, I think.
Yeah, and he ends up catching a touchdown pass, and it was right at the start of the fourth quarter. I mean, it was a minute under, 13:22 in. So we kept 25-yard touchdown pass, kicked the extra point, and it's 24-17. Now, there's a ton of football to be played, but that's when our defense just really stepped up. We controlled the game. So now lay it out, man. This is for you for the end of this game. And as I'm going to listen to you talk about this, the last drive there, I've got my picture of my man Ellsworth flying through the air and putting the stop on this boy to win the game. But go ahead on this last 4 minutes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was Ellsworth in because Abulla wasn't playing in that game?
Max Bullitt wasn't playing. And I don't think it was ever disclosed why, but I'm guessing he did something dumb while they were in Pasadena.
Michigan State Spartan football has the Bulla family and the Allen family as just two. All those brothers just go through, and one side of the family, the Allens, play on the offensive line. Jack Allen just won a Super Bowl for Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
And the Bullas, Riley Bulla, Max Bulla, they're the linebackers. So one of these guys, Hank Bulla, and he's a Spartan too.
Oh yeah.
So Kevin, talk about Ellsworth's stuff in this guy.
Yeah, well, we'll go over that. I'll talk about that whole kind of last down, right? So it scores 24-20. 24-20, Spartans up. They punt the ball. Cardinal gets it. They've got their 4 downs, and we stop them on 4th. And we'll kind of talk about how that works. As Tom mentioned, he's got his Ellsworth poster there. That's a good story to mention, right? So the starting linebacker for the whole season, Max Bulla, doesn't play in this Rose Bowl. I haven't heard that it was ever actually leaked what he did, but obviously I think he must have done something there while he was in Pasadena leading up to the game. And I think the night before, or a couple days before, that they said Max wouldn't be playing. And Ellsworth was one of 2 other linebackers that kind of stepped up and filled that role, made a bunch of good plays throughout the game that I think kind of by the end of the game secured him as the person who was going to be playing in this critical moment. So in the first down, the Spartans run a play called over hot main magic, which basically they're in their base over front. It looks like base defense, but they're going to blitz the 2 inside linebackers right up the middle. Stanford runs a kind of like a power read type of scheme where the running back comes out in front of the quarterback. Quarterback's reading the defensive end, but he's keeping it to the same side. The defensive end comes upfield, so he runs it right into the blitzing linebackers and gets taken down for a loss. On the second down, they run, it's called over hot Cleveland magic, which is a corner blitz from the short side of the field. They actually run a toss play to the wide side of the field, which is maybe the worst play that that Michigan State could hope for there. But as the linebackers drop, they're able to rally to the ball, and I think maybe Stanford gets like a 6 or 7 yard gain on that play. The next down, Michigan State runs the exact same call, over hot Cleveland magic. This time they're just on the other side of the field. They bring the corner. The outside linebacker comes in kind of around the outside edge and hits the running back in the backfield who's running some type of dive or ISO type of play up the middle, and they stop him, and it's like 4th and 1, 4th and 6 inches. Stanford plays Stanford ball, and they get into a goal line package, 2 tight ends. They've got 3 running backs in the backfield. Michigan State goes to their Spartan package, and they've got just closed everything down. They've got 3 linebackers and a safety down there in the box, corners right on the outside edge. And quarterback turns around, he hands the ball to the fullback and kind of fakes to the halfback, and the fullback keeps the ball, tries to leap up over the pile. Ellsworth comes up and leaps up and meets him in the air, stops him dead in his tracks. The rest of his team rallies around, pushes the running back, the fullback there to the ground, stops him. Game over, right? There might be a minute left. Cardinals are out of timeouts. Michigan State's able to run out the clock and win the 100th Rose Bowl.
Yeah, it was, and that's the big thing. 100th Rose Bowl. That was.
Yeah.
And
now that's one thing that I give a lot of credit to D'Antonio to. How many people would have their starting middle linebacker not play in a very important game like this? D'Antonio would. I gave him some criticism, I think, about maybe some of his choices with who starts at quarterback based on talent evaluation or just what they're able to perform. But they have rules. He holds people accountable to those, and I think I give him a lot of credit for that.
It was a great play. What a great thing, man. That was
This game was huge, right? And it's the start, like I said, of maybe I can do some research. Maybe in the 60s they had a better run, but 2013, 2014, and 2015 was an astounding run for the Michigan State Spartans, right? They went. They finished number 3?
Finished number 3.
Poll and the next season they're 11-2. Have that awesome Cotton Bowl comeback victory against Baylor. Their only 2 losses there were to Oregon and to Ohio State.
And and what was the national championship game that year? Oregon versus Ohio State.
Exactly. Yeah.
that next year, I'm guessing this is what Kevin was going to say next. They're in the college football playoff. So
yeah. Yep. Against Alabama, and we watched that game.
We won't talk about that.
It didn't finish well, but going into halftime, I think we were positioned to be competitive in it, but things kind of didn't go our way.
That's where as we were watching that game, Connor Cook led them on a drive there at the half. We had been completely dominated, but we had a chance to actually kind of put ourselves at least into the game a little bit.
I think it was going to be 10-7
I think
it would have been like 10-7 or 14-7 or something.
7-something,
Yep.
You kind of had some life there. So anyway, well, hey, listen, that's great reminiscing about them. And the funny thing is, I think we're going to be able to spend a lot of time talking about college football, especially Michigan State football. And I think with what Mel's got going on there, there's going to be some happy days to talk still, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, fellas, we probably, the old saying, okay? Beer before liquor, never sicker, okay?
Or beer before liquor, you get drunk that much quicker.
Well, okay, because that's about what's going to happen. So I'm going to pop this open for you here. A little bullet bourbon for me tonight. So
that's what I have too.
All right, man. So I'm going to go first. So I'm going to pour myself a quick shot of bullet bourbon here at the bar before we close this tab. And I'm going to talk about one thing, and it'll be real quick. 1 minute here on the NFL Scouting Combine. I really enjoyed watching that this week. Again, it's just one piece of the puzzle that we put together as you're starting to evaluate talent that's going to be drafted. And this week's was no different than any others. There's some surprises. There's some other things. But, for the first one, let's talk quarterback, couple of quarterbacks. Let's talk Kenny Pickett. They measure the guy's hands, 8.5 inches. Everybody's making jokes about, small hands, small feet, all that stuff, And all the kid did was come out and sling the damn ball around. He ran a decent 40. Sorry, I just took that shot. And so, anyway, good stuff. But he ran a decent 40. But the big thing is he threw the ball. and he threw it under adversity. You know, he could have easily just kind of rolled under the bus, you know, and he could have walked away and not thrown because everybody's worried about the size of his hands. And, you know, the question is, why does it matter? Well, it matters because sometimes when it's cold, you can't grip the ball, you don't throw it as well. And the proof would tell you that in those games, he struggles. And he had 46 fumbles in his college career. Maybe it doesn't relate to the hands, but maybe it does. And then the other statistic is that there's only one other quarterback that's been successful in NFL history since they've been measuring hands, and that's Michael Vick. And there's a whole different skill set there, you know, when you're talking about Michael Vick. So that's one thing. And then Malik Willis. Wow, did he come in and wow everybody with the throwing the ball? Beautiful, looked great. He didn't test in anything else, but he did throw the ball, did the interviews. I heard they leaked his what is the damn test that they take?
It's some sort of aptitude test.
Wonderlic test. Okay, yeah. So they leaked that, you know, that he really did well on that. Everybody's pretty impressed. And then the other thing that was leaked was that video that some guy took at a coffee shop, watching him across the street, open his suitcase and give a homeless man. I've heard he gave him shoes, a shirt, a hat, or whatever it was. But just the kind of person he is, pretty cool, you know, to see that with a young man. And then finally, and I'm moving on here, I'm going over my minute, but those
You're at about 4 right now.
Oh, baloney. Those damn defensive linemen from Georgia. You know, when you got a guy 360 pounds running a 4.78, and then his other counterpart that played next to him running a 4.75, and then the DN runs like a 4.57. I mean, it's no wonder they won the national championship, and they were productive. And it's, you know, it doesn't mean that they're going to be great NFL players, but it sure means they're going to be fast NFL players. So that's my shot for the week, man.
All right. I think for mine, I got to talk about Russell Wilson today. Got traded to the Denver Broncos. That's a player that for me, I never, you know, loved him or anything, but he at least was a staple of the NFC for the last decade. And, you know, the Seahawks, Legion of Boom team, that was definitely an era. He went to 2 Super Bowls there, and he was one of those players that I didn't ever think I'd see in a different jersey. I did think that I would see Aaron Rodgers in that Broncos jersey, so that was quite the unexpected turn of events that Rodgers is going to be sticking in the green and gold and terrorizing the Lions. But I think that the Seahawks better make some good draft picks because they haven't shown that they're very good at making those first and second round picks in the last few years. And if they let Russell Wilson go for the same type of players that they ended up drafting while Russell Wilson was there, I think that the Seahawks they're no longer going to be one of the top end teams in the NFC. And that's definitely going to be a change from the way that I've experienced football the last decade.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they target in the draft.
Well, they did get the number 9 pick overall from the Broncos, so maybe Malik Willis is a viable option for them, you know, if everyone loves him as much as Tommy says.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so for my shot, I'm just going to raise a toast to Coach K. Coached his final home game there at Duke. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get the win. They've got the tournament to look forward to and wish him the best. You know, obviously an amazing career there. Huge impact on the game. Number of players, number of coaches. So to Coach K.
There we go.
Beautiful call.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Tommy on Tap. Tune in next week and we'll have something great for you then.
It's Tommy on Tap, baby!
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Gonna bite a kneecap off.
On the last play of the game.
It's Tommy on Tap.